Hi, and welcome to another video on object-oriented programming in C#. With me, Marinas Toman. Okay, so in this video we're going to look at files in C#. The file class from the system.io namespace allows us to work with files. So we'll need to have this using statement here at the start of any program that we're going to be using the file class. And then this is just how we will use it, so it'll be the name of the class, dot, and then the name of the method. Because whenever we look at the file class reference, so we can see the file class has many useful methods for creating and getting information about files. So for example, we can copy a file, we can create or overwrite a file, we can delete a file, write all text. This creates a new file and writes the contents to it. If the file already exists, it will be overwritten. If it doesn't exist, it just creates a new file. So if you go to the .NET class reference, the file class, so if we come over to the reference, now we've talked a bit about inheritance and classes, objects, all of that. We can start to try and understand the documentation a little bit better. So you can see here the definition. This is the namespace that it's in, and it provides static methods for the creation, copying, deletion, moving and opening of a single file and aids in the creation of file stream objects. So this is the inheritance. So file is inherited directly from the object class, and everything in C# is the base class is the object class for every class in C#, similar to Java. And then so they take us through an example here where they're using a stream writer. So I'll just go on down to show. Yeah, so this is all of the methods in the string in the file class. As you can see, there's quite a few, and this is really where you want to go if you want to see what can I do with the file class, what methods. For example, we can set the date and time the file or directory was created. Same here, set the date and time the file was created. Some of these methods are overloaded. But then if you click into, let's say, click into append text. So when you open that, then that shows you the actual documentation of the method itself. So one of the things that it's going to be helpful for us is it gives us the method signature. So we know what parameters that are arguments to pass in, what our return type is going to be, different things like that. So this is helpful when we want to understand what can these methods do, and so what are the parameters? Path, this is a string parameter, the path to the file to append to. So it gives you a description about the parameters and the returns and everything as well. And then some of the exceptions that are thrown and under the different conditions that they would be thrown. So for example, a directory not found exception, that would be thrown if the specified path is invalid. For example, the directory doesn't exist, or it is on an unmapped drive, so basically it just can't find the directory. If path was null, then you would get an argument null exception. So the documentation is really good for understanding how these classes work, the classes and the methods. And then they always give us an example as well that we can try out ourselves, and then we can start to understand what's happening. So if in this example it's checking is this path a valid path, so does it exist, does this path exist, and if not, then it's going to create all of this. It's going to create a new file, so it's going to create text in this path, and what that's going to return is a stream writer, And basically what that is it's just an object that you can start to pass information to that will write straight into a file in this path that we've created in this variable here. Then afterwards, what we're doing is getting the path again into a stream, another stream writer, and this time we want to append. So the first time we're creating, and this is going to give us a stream writer that we can create a file with, and then this one will be a stream writer that will just append onto the file, you know, for the path that we've given. And then the next object will be a stream reader. So once you say file.openText and you give it the path, it's going to return a stream reader. And then what that is basically you can read, it's going to give you, you know, lines of strings. And then when you can just call this method string.readLine, and that's going to return this string, whatever the line is of text, and then it's just going to write it out to the console. And it's just going to keep doing that while this doesn't return null. Once this returns null, then you know you're at the end of the file. Okay, you know we've got to the end, there's no more text left. So then that loop stops. So the documentation is absolutely invaluable. Good written documentation will always lead to, you know, better written code. So it's always a good idea when you're using classes and you're starting to use, you know, the different namespaces, especially, you know, when you're using the different libraries of classes. It's always good to know where to go to get descriptions of the classes, you know, what they do, what parameters they're expecting in, what return types are coming back out, the names of the methods, you know, all things like that. So in this example, we'll just do a simple write to a file and then read it back again. So we could see, you know, in this example, that's basically what they're doing, but they're doing it with a stream writer, so they're just doing it with different methods. So this create text method, if we go back to the documentation, we can see create text. Go and see what this does. Okay, so you can see it's returning a stream writer, and it takes a string path. So when we call this create text, we're returning a string or a stream writer. In this example, we're just using write all text. So I'll go to the documentation again, see what this does. Write all text, and it's just taken, what are we giving it? 2 strings. So it's this one. So the first string is the path, that's the file to write to, and then the second string is the contents, so the string to write to file. And remember, we see this little question mark, that means that the contents can be null. But of course the path can't be, because we're going to get this argument null exception if the path is null. So what does it return? It doesn't return anything. So you can see why this is just on this line here. So we're just writing all this text, hello world, to this filename txt. So you can see in this example, what this is going to do is the program that the directory that this program is stored in, because you've just given it, you know, there's basically no path here. This is just a file name. So what it's going to do, it's going to save it in the directory that this file is running in. So it's going to save it in your project directory where, you know, where your C# file is running. So what normally you would do is, like, you know, they show in the Microsoft example, is you would actually give the full path. Okay, because this is your, you know, C drive and, you know, your directory structure then. And then your file name would be at the very end. So what you could actually do is have, you know, a path which would have this string stored, and then you could have a file name variable then, which would just be appended onto this, or concatenated on. But anyway, so if we just pass a file name in, it's just going to store it, in that directory that this is running. But just for, demonstration purposes, we can see that this is going to create a new file called filename.txt, and it's just going to have the string hello world in it. And then if we read this back, so read all text, we go into the file class and see what that does. Read all text and one string, was it? Yeah, so we're just passing in the file name location, or the path. So that's one string. Yeah, so that's what it is, the path to open for reading, and then it's going to return a string. So you can see here, that's what we're capturing. Okay, and what's going to return is just the contents of a string containing all the text in the file. So, if that's a large file, it's going to have a lot of, characters in that string. But, so that's one way that we can read directly from a file. And then we're just printing it out the line again. So, these are the most common, methods that you're going to be using for files. And of course, files are going to be helpful whenever you're, let's say, you're writing an application that's taking in user details, and you don't want the user to type in them details, every time the application runs. So what you could do is any kind of data that you need to persist, you need to stay alive after your application is closed, you would save it out to file. And then whenever your application starts up again, what you do, the first thing you do is you read in all of your data from file, and then you basically continue from where you left off. So you're not starting from scratch every time. So these are going to be the most, probably the most common methods that you're going to use or you're going to see. And like I say, it's just the class name dot and then whatever the file name is. And then it's always a good idea to go to the the reference itself, to the documentation. This is basically the API, the application programming interface, and this will give you descriptions on everything you need to know, and it should keep you right. So if you want to use a method, you want one that opens an existing file, for example, or so you look for the description, what you want to do, and then you can click into it and then see what is the return type, and how can I use this method, so like this example, read all text, how can I use it and what will happen, when will it give me exceptions, so another good thing, or another thing you should be aware of, is that these exceptions could be thrown if let's say your directory doesn't exist, the path to a specified directory doesn't exist. Well, you might want to put, when you're accessing the files, when you're writing this piece of code here, and that there's potentially an exception could be thrown, well, straight away that you need to put a try catch around that. And, you always got to prepare for worst case scenario. So if the user of your code, if the client code puts in the wrong, if it puts in a null argument, for example, for the path, then you need to make sure and catch that exception and handle it, handle it accordingly, and don't let the system just crash. Okay, so that's everything for the video. Thanks for watching.